Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. Today I am taking a little break from my foraging adventure nearby to sit upon a very, very destroyed log. I can't even tell what kind of tree this is right now, but there is a bear nearby that is absolutely tearing it apart to get to the termites. So every time I come back, it's in some poor state of destruction. It must be a good food source for them, I guess, especially at this time of year where the berries have waned off. So today I am going to talk to you about square breathing. I'm going to do a bit more of an explanation about the exercise and how it works. But first, I think I'm going to tell a story about how it was useful. A friend of mine and occasional listener to the podcast, Michael from the Hunting Stories podcast, which is fantastic, and you should check it out if you don't get a chance. If you haven't already, check it out. But yeah, he thought it would be good to add a bit of context about when these kinds of things have been useful for me in the past. So, when was square breathing useful for me? Many, many, many times, but one or two stories popped in my mind. The one that I'm going to tell today was a couple of years ago in South Africa. I had been putting some of the technical skills that I'd been taught to good use and had successfully managed to bow hunt quite a few animals. In this instance, I had stalked in on a small group of fallow does, and I remember the wind was good. It was kind of later in the day, the sunlight was low. I was able to use the sun behind me. There was a moment where I think it was maybe 5 fallow does were in a group feeding. But obviously when you've got that many eyes looking around, it's hard to move in. I managed to kind of use the terrain. And I remember that I was kind of a little to the right of them, at least from where I was. It was like they were probably 40 yards away, 50 yards away. And I always like to get close. I don't know why, but for me, it's more of an experience, more of a achievement in some ways to get really close to animals and just kind of be inside their heads for a while. I think you learn more that way too. But I remember thinking I needed to move across. I was in the sun at that moment, and the sun in South Africa, anywhere, but it's very bright in South Africa, even at that time of day. I was illuminated, and I knew that if I drew back at that spot, then there's a chance that they might see me. So, actually, whilst they were feeding, whilst their heads were down and they were looking in other directions, I managed to crawl across, which is a risky move, crawl across a stretch of maybe 5 or 6 yards in the light. Low, so I was kind of obscured by a bit of brushland, a bit of like a few grassy clumps, but not very much. And I actually moved into the shade of a small, I think it was maybe like an acacia tree or something of that kind. It was like a brushy, big, thickety bush. The funny thing was, I was actually choosing at that moment to be completely in the open. There was nothing blocking me in front. I wasn't behind a bush or anything, but I was in the shade, the hard shade of this bush. And that worked out really well in that situation because I was there, I was set up, and I just waited until a particular doe that I had my eye on moved into position and then put its head fully into a bush in order to eat. So that was the moment that I was able to draw back and take a shot. It was a quartering away shot, and it was, it doesn't always go this way, but it was perfect. Like, especially with my long draw, and heavy arrows. The arrow did its business. It went through that perfect pocket behind the front shoulder. It broke the back shoulder. The animal had no idea. She had no idea what was going on. She went down. She didn't run. She just was, KO. So much so that none of the others actually knew what was going on either. And they ran in circles, barked, came back, looked, ran around a bit more, and kind of just completely calmed down in a period of about 40 or 50 seconds. Now, that moment, I had less clarity. And I think I perhaps should have utilized the story or the technique from the previous Skills for Wild Minds episode that I did about the double breath, because I don't think I did it at that point. So I had executed a great shot and it went perfectly. But in my mind, suddenly I was like, wow, I have another opportunity on an animal here. So I already had another arrow knocked because I was thinking about sending another one into the doe that I'd shot. But then suddenly this other one comes trotting in, barking, and gives me a perfect broadside shot. I had time to range as well, but because I was flustered in that moment, I took what was an even easier shot than the shot before. My mental state wasn't as calm. I fluffed the shot. I pulled it left and I hit the animal like center body. So it was like that awful hollow sound of like a gut shot that just sends despair into your soul at that moment. So that was not a great moment. It was like I'd had a fantastic hunting moment and then it was all undone by this mistake. I saw that doe, while one was laying on the floor down for the count, the others all ran left. They all ran away and disappeared. And I knew immediately that was not a good second shot. So unfortunately, I tried to wait for a little bit, but the sunlight was going really fast. I tried to look at the arrow. I couldn't find the arrow. I think it was still in the animal, so I didn't find it. It ran way off to the left. By the time things had calmed down, it was too dark to take another shot. So the best plan was to move out. And this is when the waiting game begins. And it's really hard in your mind to remain positive or at least neutral in that situation. So going back to camp that night, talking with my hunting buddies, putting on a brave face, all that kind of thing. But I didn't sleep very well that night, or at least that's not actually true. I wouldn't have slept very well that night if it wasn't for this technique of square breathing. So my mind was racing, going into kind of negative places. I think I was quite hard on myself for making that second shot and not having the discipline to follow my steps again properly. It's very easy to kind of just spiral because it's like, didn't go to plan. So it's hard to just let that go and then relax and not be buzzing in your mind about all the eventualities of what could have been, what will be. So thankfully, because of this technique of square breathing, I was able to give my mind something to focus on and calm down and then actually get a good night's sleep. And that then resulted in the morning of me waking up, heading over there first light. My brain was able to work properly, and in some strange kind of way, I had the insight in my mind. My gut was there, and I was able to listen to it. So actually, rather than looking, I didn't even look in the direction that the animals ran. And I don't know, I can't exactly explain why this was, but something about me said, okay, if this animal's injured, it's going to want to go to water. So I looked on a map where the nearest pocket of water, the nearest pond or watering hole was. And I found that, and it was actually in the complete opposite direction. And so I in the morning, stalked my way through that direction, and within about 15 minutes, I saw a fluffy rock laying on the ground, which has little white spots on it, which is the trademark sign of a fallow deer. So obviously a lot of luck involved in that, but I think the clarity I had in my mind after having a good sleep and not letting myself spiral too badly at having made a mistake, which we all do, especially with bow hunting, that really helped me to make good decisions and get to that animal while it was still cold, and yeah, save the meat. The meat was actually fine. So, I mean, the shot wasn't great, and it wasn't the most beautiful thing I've ever seen when I arrived. I am actually in the process of making a video about this because I captured this whole thing, so I will put that out on YouTube soon. But ultimately, I think having that tool really helped me make good choices. So now I've already recorded a bit of a setup and the exercise. I'm going to jump to that now. So this technique is called square breathing. I think it's actually used by the military, if I'm correct in knowing that. I think someone told me that before. And it involves regulating how you breathe. It's going to mean that if you think of it like a square, you breathe in for a certain period of time, hold your breath for the same amount of time, exhale for the same amount of time, and then hold your breath for the same amount of time, and then reset. So it's a case of, usually for me, and it will be different for everyone, and you just got to find the rhythm that works for you. But for me, I usually, depending on how I feel, actually if I'm more stressed, I'll start with shorter sections, but 5 or 6 seconds, and that's just me counting in my head, is usually the cycle that I go with. I think let's start with 4, just so that everyone can be included. I'm going to just do a few reps and yeah, go from there. You can do this for as little or as long as you like. For me, I find 5 to 10 minutes is usually a good amount of time to just try it, and that really helps to quiet your mind down, make your body feel a bit more regulated, and yeah, reduce stress levels in potentially stressful times. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath in. And hold. Exhale. And hold. Now take in the breath. Hold. Exhale. Hold.